It was the kind of storm it didn't just soak the earth, it unsettled it like old bones stirred beneath the sod. Wind rolled low across the prairie, thick with the smell of rain and smoke, bending the yellow grass into waves that whispered of something coming. Silas Boone rode through it like he always did, alone, hat pulled low, coat snapping behind him like a torn sail. He didn't fear the wild. He feared staying still. His horse, Jonah, moved slow over the rise, careful of the rocky ground, when Silas saw it, just a ripple at first, something off in the rhythm of the land. Then color, a torn edge of turquoise where no flower grew. He pulled Jonah to a halt. The air tightened in his chest. She was lying in the grass like a broken statue, face to the side, legs curled unnaturally. Blood streaked down her shins. Her dress, once ceremonial, was ripped at the hem, its beadwork dulled by mud. Long black hair clung to her shoulders in a thick, wet braid. She wasn't moving. Silas dismounted slowly. The wind howled, flinging bits of grit against his cheek, but he barely noticed. Kneeling beside her, he reached a hand to her throat. A pulse, faint but steady. Her face was bruised high along the cheekbone, a dark plum blooming beneath one eye. He touched nothing else. He lifted her into his arms. She didn't stir. She weighed little, but her presence was overwhelming, like carrying the last ember from a dying fire. Behind him, thunder rolled across the plains. And then, just beyond the edge of his sight, movement. 4 horsemen emerged from the storm mist, flanking him on both sides, 2 on his left, 2 on his right. They wore no expressions, just feathers and paint and long stares. They watched him, but did not stop him. Silas didn't speak. He only nodded once, slow and respectful, then turned Jonah toward home. The wind was louder now. The riders vanished behind him without a sound. Back at the ranch, the storm cracked open the sky. Rain came hard, pelting the windows and flattening the dust. Silas laid her on the narrow cot in a room he used for feed storage, the cleanest place he had. He lit a lamp and fetched water, then soap, then clean rags. He worked in silence, cleaning the blood from her legs, the dirt from her face. When he cut away the ruined hem of her dress, he did it without looking at her skin. His hands shook, not from fear, but from something deeper, reverence maybe. Guilt, too. He'd failed once before. Years back, his little brother, Micah, had been gored by a bull out near the canyon ridge. Silas got there too late. Ever since, he'd built his life in fences and silence. No one stayed. No one should. Yet now, this woman, unconscious and bleeding, lay in his home as if fate had pushed her into his path, like a dare. She stirred once near midnight, eyes fluttering open, pupils wide and black as cave water. Her gaze landed on him, and he expected fear. Instead, there was confusion, then stillness. She tried to rise, but pain stopped her. He didn't move closer. "I ain't gonna touch you," he said softly, voice like dry gravel. "You're safe." She blinked, lips parted, but said nothing. Then she looked away, toward the storm-drum window, and closed her eyes. He left her a bowl of broth on the floor beside her cot, lit another lamp, and went out to the porch. The rain had eased. The land smelled fresh and raw. By dawn, Silas saddled Jonah and headed into town. Red Brush was barely a dot on the map, 2 saloons, 1 church, and a general store where everything cost too much unless you were friends with the owner. Elias Cray wasn't a man known for generosity nor kindness. Silas pushed open the store door. The little bell above jingled like a guilty conscience. Elias looked up from counting nails. "Well, I'll be," he muttered. Boone shows his face. Silas placed a small list on the counter, bandages, laudanum, something for fever. "Need these." Elias didn't move. "Heard a tale already this morning. A wild girl riding behind you yesterday. Or was she thrown?" Silas said nothing. "You bring her home, Boone." Elias leaned forward, voice louder now. "Or did you just find her in the grass and decide she was yours?" Others in the store looked up from their shelves. A woman with a child clutched the boy closer and stepped away. Whispers began, thin, sharp, and mean. Silas looked at Elias the way a wolf might look at a fence post. "She's hurt." "Right." Elias slid the medicine forward. "Funny thing that. First you lose a brother, now you pick up a squaw. Always a tragedy around you." He paid without a word and walked out into the morning sun, though it felt colder than the night before. Back at the ranch, the air was still. The storm had passed, but its scent still lingered. Wet earth, cracked wood, something burned. Silas stepped inside. The cot was empty. Panic flickered in his chest until he saw her, standing near the hearth, barefoot, wrapped in a wool blanket. Her eyes met his. Stronger now. Watchful. "You ran?" he asked, though his voice didn't carry accusation. "No." Her voice was quiet, thickly accented, but sure. "I waited." He nodded slow. Words felt clumsy now. They stood like that for a long moment. Two strangers. Two stories interrupted. Outside, the wind shifted again. He stepped onto the porch, and there, on the far ridge, riders approached. Not for this time. More. Distant but certain. She stepped beside him. "My people," she said. And Silas Boone, who hadn't let anyone stay in years, didn't move to stop them. The riders moved like ghosts through the golden grass, their horses silent beneath them, hooves muffled by the damp earth. They came in a perfect line, 8 this time, with no urgency, no raised voices, no drawn weapons. Yet something in their approach made the hairs on Silas's neck rise. Not fear, but reverence, as if the earth itself leaned toward what would happen next. Ioka stood a step ahead of him now, blanket still clutched around her shoulders, her feet bare, on the cold porch boards. She didn't look back. Her spine was straight, chin lifted. Even bruised and battered, she wore herself like royalty. The lead rider dismounted, an elder whose face seemed carved by time and smoke. His braids were streaked with gray, beads woven into each fold of hair. His eyes were sharp but heavy with age, the kind that had seen both war and winter starvations. Silas knew before the man spoke who he was. "I am Tahoma," he said. "Her father." Silas nodded once. His pulse ticked, but his mouth stayed shut. Tahoma's gaze swept over the homestead, rough-hewn fences, the barn with its slouched roof, the ashes of last night's fire still cooling near the shed. Then his eyes returned to Silas, measuring something. "You carried her," the chief said, not as a question. "I found her near the creek bed. She was hurt. You took her into your home. I couldn't leave her." Behind Tahoma, the riders waited without shifting. Ioka stepped forward, dropping the blanket from her shoulders. Beneath, her dress hung in tatters, stained but unmistakable, a dress reserved for ceremonies, for betrothal or high naming. The beadwork shimmered faintly in the low sun. Tahoma looked at her, then back to Silas. "You have made a choice," he said. "So now we give you one." A hush fell over the yard. Even the wind seemed to still. "You may take her as wife," Tahoma said, voice even, "if your spirit is clean. If your intent was true. If you understand what it means to bind yourself to our blood." The offer hung in the air like a blade. Silas didn't answer at first. His jaw worked once. Then he looked to Ioka. She returned his gaze, eyes unreadable, not hopeful, not afraid. Simply waiting. "I didn't help her to own her," he said finally, quiet but clear. "That ain't why I brought her here." A sound rose among the riders, not laughter, not disapproval. Something more like breath shared in relief. Tahoma gave a single nod. "Then you may keep her near, as long as she chooses to remain." The tribe did not stay long. There were no threats, no warnings. Only a brief exchange between Ioka and her father, words spoken in their tongue, too soft to catch. Then the riders mounted again and turned back toward the ridge, vanishing into the prairie as quickly as they had appeared. The silence left behind was immense. Ioka did not leave. She moved through the days like wind through tall grass, gentle, unannounced. She mended what she found broken. A torn saddle strap, a loose fence post. She swept the porch without being asked. She cooked with herbs Silas didn't recognize and folded his clothes in neat, careful piles. He tried not to watch her, but always did. He taught her the horses' names. She showed him how to quiet a spooked foal with nothing more than a hum and a slow palm to the neck. He offered her space. She never asked for more than a chair by the fire. Their words were few, but their silences grew soft around the edges. On the 5th morning, he found her braid coiled neatly beside his hat, left on the table like a token. He stared at it a long time before touching it, longer still before tucking it carefully into the drawer with his brother's old bandana. They went into town once. She wore a plain shawl and rode behind him on Jonah. Every eye followed them. Elias Cray muttered loud enough for others to hear. Figures the mute rancher finds a woman who can't talk back. Silas turned, calm but firm, and stared until the man dropped his gaze. Later that night, by the fire, Ioka spoke first. "You didn't defend me." "I didn't need to," he said. "Folks like him ain't worth breath." She smiled then barely, but was real. Trouble came 3 nights after. Men on horseback, not from her tribe. White men, drunk on something mean. They circled the barn, shouting crude things about squaw wives and whores on stolen land. One threw a bottle that shattered against the door. Another lit a torch and hurled it at the shed. Flames rose fast. Silas stepped outside with his rifle but held it low. His voice was calm. "You boys don't want this." Laughter met him. One dismounted. "You gonna shoot me for visiting your pet?" Then Ayoka stepped beside Silas, bare feet silent on the dirt, bow in hand, a single arrow notched and drawn. Her stance was stillness incarnate. But before anything more could happen, shapes emerged from the trees, her tribe, silent, surrounding the intruders like the return of the storm. The men froze, their arrogance shriveling. No words were exchanged. They fled into the night, leaving only the flicker of the dying fire behind them. The shed burned, but the house stood. At sunrise, they stood among the ashes. Smoke curled around their boots. Silas stared at the wreckage, and then at her, words heavy in his throat. "I didn't want you hurt." She touched the scar on his hand, the one he never spoke of. "You won't lose me," she said. And in that moment, something shifted, not loud, not grand, but final. Like a door closing behind them, and another opening ahead. They rode out that afternoon, just to the edge of a land where grass gave way to sky. She let her hair down in the wind. He removed his hat. "If I stay," she whispered, "it is because I choose to." Silas didn't answer with words. He just looked at her like a man who had stopped wandering. And far in the distance, thunder grumbled again, not a threat this time, but a reminder that some storms pass and some stay a while.